Hi, how you doing and welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into game week 25. We're going to look at the double game week, the blank game week, and just kind of discuss it really how best to navigate through those, because you don't really want to throw all your eggs in the double game week basket and then leave yourself a bit short-handed for the blank game weeks, needing to take points hit and all of that. So we are going to talk about how best to work through those game weeks. If you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. We also put out videos how my own team is doing this season, and we currently have a team in the top 60k in FPL, so if you do want to keep track of that, please do subscribe. The support has been awesome so far. Let's get into it. So we're going to look at the goalkeepers for this team. I'm going to start off with Jordan Pickford. Now, he is actually the highest scoring keeper, and at 4.5 million, Everton have Palace, Brighton, West Ham in the next three, and they play in the blank. I think he's fantastic value. You know what you're going to get from him. He might get the odd clean sheet, but he's going to get save points. He's pretty much guaranteed to get 2 or 3 points a game week. And to be honest, as a 4.5 million goalkeeper, that's as much as you can expect. But clean sheets are so hard to come by this season, I wouldn't necessarily invest any more money than that in my keeper, especially when there's so many good attacking options with the double game weeks coming up. I've gone with Kelleher as a reserve goalkeeper. Now, I know he takes up a spot from Liverpool players, but a lot of Liverpool assets are quite expensive. He did actually play in the most recent game for Liverpool. So, I mean, you know, he's not going to play every game week, but he is a reasonable option if you just want to sort of get him in and take a risk. But he's really in my team because he is the cheapest goalkeeper in FPL, and he's enabled me to get in some better attacking options. My first defender is going to be Botman. Now, whilst he doesn't have any double game weeks coming up, he also doesn't have any blanks. He's got Bournemouth, Wolves, Palace and West Ham in the next 6. Newcastle are pushing for that top 4 space, so they are a team that are going to be taking it seriously. And they've also got no distractions in terms of European football or anything like that, which does kick off in the next week or so for those teams still in Europe. So there is a chance they could take advantage of that over the next month or so. And I've gone with a Brighton double up as well. Just like Newcastle, no blank. Sheffield, Everton, Fulham and Forest in the next 4. And Pascal Gross is on pens. He actually has 40 more points than the next Brighton midfielder, which you'd have told me at the start of the season by the end of game week 24. Pascal Gross should have 40 more points than someone like Mitoma. I wouldn't have believed you. So it just goes to show how impactful he is in the game. And Brighton's fixtures do look really good. They also mean I'm not having to mess about with transfers for the blank game week in terms of getting in enough players, because they cover me all the way through there. They've got a great combination of good fixtures and they've got fixtures. My other defender I've got is Gabriel, and he actually has 3 attacking returns in his last 4 game weeks. He has no blank either, which leaves me with a full defence for the next couple of game weeks. I obviously would have liked to have had someone like Trent if money was no object, and we do actually have quite a cheap wildcard team here in comparison to a lot of team values at this stage of the season. So if you can upgrade any of the positions, do let me know in the comments which ones you'd upgrade, for how much and why. And who would you swap out as well? I've actually gone with the Man City triple up. They have a double game week and they've got no blank. Perfect team to get in on for your wild card. I think the double home game week as well is really something special. I think if you were triple captaining and you weren't wildcarding, Haaland is a great triple captain option for this game week. As just a bit of extra advice, you might need to choose between someone like Foden and Trent for your team. Maybe you don't want to triple up on a Man City attack. You would also want to have a bit more Liverpool in your team. So I think swapping Foden for Trent is a reasonable option if you can sort of make that work with team value elsewhere. Someone like De Bruyne, whilst he did start on the bench, I think that's kind of precautionary because he's coming back from injury. It is a slight risk that he doesn't start both, but I think having rested the previous week does kind of leave him open to playing both of these games. And like I said, because they are at home, I think it's a really good option to kind of capitalise on Man City players. Now, I also have a Villa double up as well as a Brighton double up. They have good upcoming fixtures. Fulham and Forest at home in the blank is a really good option. And they've also got Luton in the next 3. Digne is back fit, and he is their starting left back. He has got 3 assists so far this season. They were when he was playing in, week out. I think he did get 3 attacking returns in 8 game weeks at the start of the season. So he has got it in his locker to provide that sort of attacking option for Villa. Watkins also has 8 returns in his last 8. And I think, you know, we are recording this video during the Man United game. He's not yet returned against Man United, but before then, he is really consistent with his attacking returns. I've also gone with a Liverpool player here. Now, I've gone with Jota. I think if you wanted to swap Jota out for Trent and get a cheaper midfielder and play Trent, I think that's great. Currently, Trent does have a knock, which is why I've left him out of this wildcard team, because you're not too sure whether he's going to get risked in the first game of the game week. Someone like Jota is great for returns per minute. He actually has 8 returns in his last 8 game weeks. And that's not all through playing 90 minutes. Some of those game weeks he's come on as a sub. So he's very efficient with his attacking, and he's someone that you can rely on. A lot of people think, Liverpool are going to rotate, but Jota more or less does play a lot of the time. You are kind of playing it a little bit tight with whether Salah's going to be back in time, but I do think he's probably not going to be back for the Brentford game at least. And then you maybe just have to hope that Jota is going to be starting for that Luton game at home, which is really why you'd want Liverpool players in your team. I think if you're not too sure about Jota, Trent or someone like even Robertson would be a great option as well. So I've gone with Solanke. I could get Ivan Toney in for the double up. I think if I did have Ivan Toney, I'd want to transfer him out after the double, even though it's a tough run of fixtures for Brentford, just to get in Solanke and have him in for his fixtures. Now, Solanke after Newcastle and Man City, he does have Burnley, Sheffield and Luton in a double game week, which is as good as it's going to get. Wolves, Everton, Palace and Luton again. Now, those fixtures are fantastic. And I think if you had Solanke in now, I couldn't blame you. If you wanted to try and squeeze Toney in and then swap to Solanke after the double, I think that is probably the optimum way of doing it. It just depends on whether you want to lose that much more value elsewhere in your team. If I had to find another million for Ivan Toney now in the squad I've got on the screen, it would probably mean cutting out someone like Foden, maybe De Bruyne or Jota in order to make it work. Would I want to have Toney in a double game week ahead of any of those three? No, because his fixtures are tougher. I would rather have one of those 3 midfielders instead. So on the bench, I've got Garnacho. He plays Luton in the next game week, which is great. He's actually got 90 minutes in 7 out of his last 10 games and 5 returns in his last 5, not including the Villa game, which is still going on right now. And he's only 7 points less total than Bruno Fernandes. He plays Fulham at home in the blank game week 26, which provides another bit of cover. And he does have Luton, Everton and Sheffield in the next 5, which is really good fixtures. He's someone that could be on form. And our final player is Trusty from Sheffield United. Now, he is someone who is just in there because he's cheap. He's my 3rd bench player, but he does actually play Wolves in the blank, which isn't the worst fixture in the world for Sheffield. If they can keep up that form from when they played Luton, I think it could be a reasonable option. I wouldn't go panicking with the blank game week. I think if you can get 10 or 11 players in, that's good enough. I think someone like Trusty, if he can get you 2 points, there's no point making a transfer to get someone else in who you're not going to want long term. I think if your bench players are playing, just go with them for 1 game week, get a few points off them, and then just go back to your starting 11 for the rest of the season. Now, the team rating is 90%. Now, it's not our highest rating of the season. We were able to get 100% a couple of weeks ago, but it's also not the lowest. I usually think if you can get sort of low 90s, it's much of a muchness there. The variables that you can get on the pitch that you can't always get on the data, it's hard to predict. And I do think the team can do quite well. But shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for that team rating there. I think it's okay. Our value is 99.7 million. Now, a lot of people who are still playing this game will have a much bigger team value budget than that. So if you can upgrade 1 or 2 players, go for it. If you're thinking of some options that I've missed, let me know in the comments. The strengths for the team are, it does play the blank/double quite well. It does give you a bit of cover for the blank game week in game week 26. And it is flexible with transfers as well. We've talked about a few different options you could get if you maybe wanted one player rather than another, or if you wanted to play the transfers a little bit different. It does allow you a bit of flexibility with some movement of players for your team for this game week, but also moving off certain players for future game weeks. The weaknesses for me is there's a bit of a dilemma for options. All those potential transfer options we've talked about, they don't always fit in as you want, and I think there's certain options that you think you could get and then they end up performing better if you don't get them in. So I think it does give you a bit of a selection headache, but then that's part of Fantasy League, and it's potentially not maximising the double. There are definitely more players off a wildcard you could get into your team for a double game week, I've tried to make a bit of a balance in the squad for the blank game week and future game weeks beyond that as well, because if you throw all your eggs in the double game week basket, you know, you're not going to necessarily get the mid to long term benefit. You might end up stuck with a few players. So my advice would be, if you are wildcarding, do have a think about how you can move off certain players. You know, how could you get Salah back in your team? How could you get Son back in your team if you wanted them as well after the blank game week? So yeah, let me know what you think. Thank you very much for listening. If you are wildcarding, I'd be interested to know what your team looks like as well. And I will see you in the next one.